responsibility to give meaning to those words, to take concrete steps and actions that deliver on that promise. Violence will not address the grievances of the Egyptian people.
Earlier Friday, the White House spokesman had a warning. Washington might rethink $1.5 billion of annual foreign aid to Egypt.
I think we are watching very closely the actions of the government, of the police, of all the security forces, and all of those in the military. That their actions may affect our assistance would be the subject of that review.
Despite that warning, Barack Obama is still stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, the embattled president. On the other, people power on the streets of a critical U.S. ally. Egypt is a major military partner of the United States since making peace with Israel. It controls the Suez Canal and so ensures the free flow of oil to Western markets. And the U.S. sees it as a voice of moderation in the Arab world and helpful fixer in dealing with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. It's also a place where Obama himself gave a major speech praising the universal nature of human rights.
You must maintain your power through consent, not coercion.
Speeches are fine, but in the past, the U.S. has not accepted election results in the Mideast it doesn't like, such as when Hamas won a Palestinian election in 2006. With the Muslim Brotherhood perhaps the only major organized political force in Egypt, decisions in Washington may become harder and harder to make.
Who are they supporting? Are they supporting Mubarak? Because, I mean, that's where all the money is going, isn't it?
This demonstration in solidarity with the protesters in Egypt may be small, but the pressures on Barack Obama are great. It will likely be a late night and early morning at the White House, and no amount of phone calls to President Mubarak will change things much when everything seems to be decided on the Egyptian street. Nick Spicer, Al Jazeera, Washington.
Okay, well, let's look at how the story is being covered online now. I mean, the internet was down overnight in Egypt. Our reporter Jane Dutton saying that there's some connections coming back now. And, of course, the internet played a big role in getting Egypt's people to mobilise. Kamal has been monitoring things from our Egypt web desk. Bring us up to date, Kamal.
Thank you, Shirley. As you say, even though the internet is still down in Egypt, there's still some interesting information about the online side to the story. We're going to have a look at that in a moment. First, just want to bring up the graphic. We did show you this yesterday. This is an updated version, though, which tells even more of the story. It's an illustration of how Egypt's internet usage has fallen. Fallen being the understatement of the century in the last 2 days. Have a look. Just before 6 p.m. on Thursday, when the internet was effectively turned off in Egypt, until then there was steady growth. Look at it heading up, building up to Friday's events. People clearly energised by what was to come, and then, boom, flatlined. And has done so ever since. Vodafone even admitting it, and other providers were instructed by the government to cut their cell services, and internet services simply just got cut off. Question is, how long can this go on? Not so much how long will it go on, because that is anyone's guess. But there's a theory that says this simply can't last. We saw this on AOL.com on Saturday. One, the economy. It is the weekend now, but the working week starts on Sunday in the Middle East, and Egypt's economy will need the internet to get moving again. Two, the resentment that is already there, and that will only get worse the longer Egyptians are kept offline. And three, the outside pressure. President Obama's already called for the government to reverse its interference, he called it, with the internet. Failure to comply with that would risk a pretty negative reaction, you'd have to say. And so, people in Egypt have had to get creative to get online. They say necessity is the mother of invention, and here is how Egyptians, I should say, have been inventing. First, there is the Noor internet service provider. It is a very small part of the market, just 8%, but apparently still online, so people have been trying to get onto that ISP to access through Noor. They've also reverted to, would you believe, dial-up internet. Remember this, the way we used to connect to the net using a modem and a phone cable. It's considered almost archaic these days, but it does work if Egyptians call in to a server outside of the country. And tweet relays have been set up. We're getting really old school here. People picking up the phones that were working, relaying messages on their landlines to someone outside the country, who then tweets on their behalf. We've seen a lot of that. Let's look at some international reaction, though, on Twitter, given people inside Egypt have been struggling to get their tweets out. This is what we've been seeing elsewhere. First one, get Mubarak out. There it is. And the whole of the Middle East will transform. Domino effect. Saudi Arabia is long overdue for change, says this user. Mubarak's refusing to step down. We'll see about that. Protesters in the streets of Egypt are overthrowing the regime. And on an international view, Joe Biden eagerly labelled the WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange as a high-tech terrorist, but he's reluctant to call Mubarak a dictator. America at its best, says that Twitter. Speaking of America, we did hear officially from America. We've been looking at some official Twitter accounts. This one from White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs, who you saw earlier. He said, very concerned about violence in Egypt. Government must respect the rights of the Egyptian people and turn on the social networking and the internet. The US government's been big on that. Bahrain's Foreign Minister Khalid Al-Khalifa said Egyptian television showing police beating up protesters. Interesting official language. And his Swedish counterpart, Carl Bildt, adds, my friend Amr Musa puts it well. The Arab citizen is angry, is frustrated. That is the point. So the name of the game is reform. Also want to tell you about our correspondents in Egypt on Twitter. They're tweeting as and where the communication situation allows them. But, you know, if you're on Twitter, I would urge you to start adding these to your list. Ayman Mohideen, at Ayman M is where you'll find him. He's in Cairo, of course. Dan Nolan's there too. At Nolan Jazeera is his Twitter name. And Rawya Rage, who you saw and heard in Alexandria earlier, tweeting under her full name of at Rawya Rage. You can get in touch too. You know our website, aljazeera.net/English. We've got a debate going on the Egypt protests there. That's the front page. You can also go to yourviews.aljazeera.net and join in the debate there. Send us your views. If you're in Egypt, if you can access us, if there's some way you can do this, very much love to hear what you're saying and seeing in Egypt. That's all from our